if you just believe in it and are willing to work hard and come together to achieve it. My name is Christina Cook, and I'm a mission specialist for NASA's Artemis II mission around the moon. When I look back at my dreams as a kid, I definitely never thought I would actually get here. I was very pragmatic. Even though I'm a dreamer, I knew that the odds were way against me again, so I might as well do something I'm loving in the meantime. I definitely loved science and math in school and, did pretty well in those things, but I also loved being active. I was always outside. I loved things that made me feel small. I loved looking at the night sky, oftentimes between the pine tree branches, or I loved the ocean. North Carolina also has mountains, and when we go there, I just loved the vastness of all of those things. I loved how they made me feel and what they made me think about, and the vastness of the universe and how much out there was to learn. I'm drawn to exploring. I'm drawn to challenges that involve both mental and physical, and I'd much rather be solving problems wearing a whole lot of equipment and in a harsh environment, and that's just something I've carried with me ever since I was a kid. Thinking about the fears or challenges that I've had to overcome, there are just so many. I mean, basically, that has been the journey. I always say to people, do what scares you, and that means I have to follow my own advice. So doing what scares me meant getting on a plane and going to the Antarctic, getting on a plane and going to study abroad in Ghana, applying to become an astronaut, opening the EVA hatch in the airlock and going out of it into the darkness, strapping myself onto a rocket. And so for me, I think that no matter what the challenge, recognizing that if people believe in you and you believe they believe in you, the challenges seem always a little bit easier. To me, the moon, it represents history. It is a witness plate. Everything that's ever happened to the moon is still written on the moon. Every single person has looked at the moon their entire lives. We see the same moon. That's something really special. It's just the epitome of a symbol of something that's in each of our hearts, but that's also represents exploration and reaching.
And as we continue to watch the convoy, almost at the pad, mission specialist and first-time flyer, Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen.
I have this very distinct memory of seeing an image of an astronaut standing on the moon. It's burnt in my brain because I went back to it so many times in my childhood, and I would look at that image, and I know it had a huge impact on me that humans had walked on the moon. My name is Colonel Jeremy Hansen. I'm an astronaut with the Canadian Space Agency, and I'm a mission specialist on NASA's Artemis II mission around the moon. My elementary school years, I grew up on a farm outside of London, Ontario. I spent as much time as I could with my dad on the farm. I learned the value of hard work, for example. If I wanted to go to work with Dad, it was going to be a long day, and I was going to have to not complain, or I wasn't going to get to go the next day. I had a treehouse. I had a vivid imagination, and I changed my treehouse into a spaceship. I made all these dials and controls. I had circuit breakers for switches that I found in the barn, and I was exploring space in my imagination. The most important thing I did to get to where I wanted to go in life, which was flying fighter jets and eventually becoming an astronaut, is I shared those desires with other people. And it turns out, just like you don't go to the moon on your own, if you could, I would have done it a long time ago in my treehouse as a kid. You have to go as a team. I think the biggest impediment to achieving my goals was, of course, myself. And I think that's a common human experience. There are many times where just little things would get in my way, and my immediate interpretation of that was, well, now that goal's out the window. You know, people must have lifted me back up, and somewhere in the back of my head, that persistence came through. And I think that's a common human experience, to doubt ourselves. I've come to this, I guess, realization that I believe that we all have gifts to contribute, and the goal is to figure out how to use your energy towards adding positively to humanity's existence on this planet. But I love it when humanity sets big goals, like sending humans to the surface of the moon with an eye to eventually going to Mars, because when we do that, we can bring together genius from not just even in one country, but around the world. I've also learned from my indigenous mentors that they refer to the moon as grandmother moon. So you've probably heard of Mother Earth. They use grandmother moon because grandmother moon is responsible for the water in their community, just like the moon moves the water around the planet, affects the tides. And I think that's a really beautiful thing for us as we go back to the moon, to think about all the different cultures around the world and how they view the moon differently. And that's really neat because we all share that same moon in the night sky.
What's really neat, too, was that drive to the launch pad, that point of view to see what the crew is seeing as well as their Astrovan rides up the pad slope and are now on the surface, about to walk up to their vehicle.
Yeah, you know, we talked about how tall this rocket is earlier.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah, look at that point of view, yeah. Pad 39B, another historic place here at Kennedy Space Center. Construction began in 1964, finished 3 years later. Apollo 10, the full dress rehearsal for the moon landing. That was the first mission to launch from this pad.
Yeah, you know, we've used this pad for a lot of missions. You know, we modified the pad in the 70s and 80s, and then the shuttle missions actually launched from here as well.
And then, of course, Artemis 1 took off from this launch pad, November 2022. And now here we are about to see the Artemis 2 crew get out of the Astrovan and make their way up the mobile launcher to the 274-foot level, where they will embark on their first crewed test flight of the Artemis program.
You know, I think that button in the elevator actually says space when you
It does?
hit it. Yeah.
Really?
At least on 39 Alpha it does. So I imagine it says something similar here.
Again, let's take a look at the clock as we wait for the crew to get out. 4 hours, 10 minutes, and counting until the top of our 2-hour launch window today. Let's head back across the street to Daryl, who's following the launch team every step of the way.
All right, thank you, Megan and Nicole. And here inside Firing Room 1, we had a nice moment. The launch director, Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, NASA's first female launch director, standing up from her console, taking her cell phone and snapping photos as the Artemis crew that she had just given the go to leave the astronaut crew quarters, driving by, and of course going up the causeway until they got there to the pad. And now we see them coming out of the Astro van there and getting ready to ascend the launch tower. Well, we got a weather brief before they went out to the pad, and of course LWO gave a go. There could be some rain out there at the pad. It's already rained out there already. If you're in the area and you're watching right now, well, certainly you know that there's some rain in the area. There's going to be spotty showers that are going to be coming ashore here, and we expect that throughout our rest of our countdown. But we also are getting forecasts that there'll be some clearing as we get closer to our launch window. Big wave from Reed Wiseman there, and a thumbs up as the crew goes into the elevator to ascend, which is the communications that's going between that crew and the launch team here as they walk them through configuring their various consoles as well as getting ready. A nice moment here, and I'll just pause to just look and see as the crew walks across the zero deck, as they call it, which is the deck that's right there even with the engines, and they're taking a moment to go over there and stand up and gaze up at the 322-foot tall SLS rocket. This was part of the plan for the Artemis 2 crew, and potentially a rocket that could help them make history to go farther from Earth than any crew has before. The farthest distance from Earth when they launch will be roughly around 248,000 statute miles. They're expected to go about 4,000 miles farther than the Apollo 13 crew did. And now they've headed to the elevator to go up. Again, I was talking about the loops. You're going to be hearing from the crew as they discuss with the launch team getting various systems ready to go. And then closer to liftoff, we'll hear the operational launch team loop brought forward ahead of the critical pre-launch polls and then the start of terminal count. And that should be right around L-25 minutes, right before the NASA test director gives their poll and the launch director gives her management poll, which happens at L-17 minutes. Right now, a lot of focus is on, of course, the closeout crew. They've made the way for the crew to get inside the spacecraft now and walk across that crew access arm, and there they are. They have been working on a tight timeline, but they are ready to go, and they are ready to receive the crew and start putting them inside their Integrity spacecraft. That's it from the firing room. We'll send it back to Megan and Nicole.
And Launch Director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, again, we mentioned her a second ago. Her team have been training extensively for this moment since Artemis 1 launched in November 2022. Today, they have a message for Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy.
Today, you carry the work of thousands and the hopes of millions. Every test, every simulation, every long day and night have led to this moment. This team is ready. The vehicle is ready, and you